Welcome to Aircrew Interview. I'm Mike, your host. This is part 2 of our interview with Mike Ling. In this episode, Mike chats about his time being Red 10 for 6 years, coming back as Red 3, sharing some of his favourite moments on the Red Arrows, and also his current role flying with the Blades. If you enjoy our videos and podcasts and would like to support the channel, you can do this by donating monthly at patreon.com/aircrew interview, where we have 4 different tiers for you to choose from. This greatly helps us to continue putting out regular quality content. Thank you and enjoy.
And obviously many of people and our viewers know you from being Red 10, and you had an epic, was it 6 years has been Red 10? So can you tell us what this role entailed and did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had 6 years. So the idea, unfortunately, the Red Arrows had a tragic year in 2011 where John Egan and Sean Cunningham were killed in separate accidents, and it was a really awful time. I'd left the team in 2010, so I wasn't in the team in 2011. I still lived very close to Scampton, so I was still close to the team and saw the guys. So I saw them go through, guys and girl, of course Kirsty was in the team then. I saw them go through some horrid times, and it was awful. At the end of 2011, after Sean's accident, there had to be a change around in the team so that Martin Higgins, who'd gone back as Red 10, for 2012 onwards, he actually was put into Sean's position. So they needed somebody else to backfill the Red 10 slot. So I was in a desk job, not enjoying very much, I have to say, and they asked if I'd be interested in going back for a couple of years. It was going to be 2 years as Red 10. So I said, of course, yeah, if I get to fly jets again and be part of my favourite team, second favourite team, part of the team I wanted to be in since I was very young, of course I'd jump at that chance. So I agreed to it and went back and refreshed again on the Hawk and then started as Red 10. Now, the idea of Red 10 is that essentially the supervisor, so you're on the ground at every public display in constant radio contact with the team to let them know if anything untoward's going to affect the performance. So that was the primary role. There were loads of other roles as Red 10, which developed actually in my sitting, in my time there. It started off being, you were there just really as the coordinator of the summer, so working out who's going to go where, and then being on the ground at every display. Now, of course, if you're there to supervise and be in contact, you might as well make yourself useful to the tens of thousands of people watching. So I was also the commentator, which I have to admit, for the first few, I didn't really enjoy. It wasn't a case of watching the display thinking, I wish I was doing that. It was just, I don't think it was something that I really wasn't geared up to be. It was a commentator, but the more I learnt how much the crowd were enjoying the display, and you could almost get instant feedback from them by saying something that they would react to, that's when I really started playing on it. And at the end of my 6 years as Red 10, I thoroughly enjoyed being the commentator. It was great. It was lovely to hear how the crowd enjoyed it and what sort of things they were doing in reaction to what they were seeing and hearing, and I really enjoyed that in the end.
So did you essentially create the commentary script yourself?
So there were certain engagement messages we had to get out in the commentary. Of course, the whole point of the Red Arrows is that they are the link between the British public and the Royal Air Force. So there are messages the Royal Air Force want to get out by using that biggest engagement tool. So I would have messages I had to give out, and they were dictated by the Ministry of Defence or the Royal Air Force. For example, in 2015, it was the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Britain. So what we were trying to say there is that 75 years ago, the Hurricanes and Spitfires were defending the skies, they were securing the skies, and then what we wanted to tell the public is that there is still a force, the Typhoon Force, are still securing the sky 75 years later, 24/7, 365. So that was how the commentary was designed. Now I'd write a script. Of course, you're trying to highlight what the background of the crews were, the fact that it's a big team effort, it's not just about pilots, there are other trades in the Royal Air Force, etc, etc, etc. So I'd write the script, and then as part of the public display authority, I would have to actually commentate to one person, which was the hardest thing. Rather than talking to 600,000 people was actually all right in the end. Yeah. But talking to one person, this senior officer, just found it really awkward because you're not getting any feedback from him. You're just kind of reading this script and getting these messages out. So I found that quite difficult. But that was the idea, is that I'd write the script, it would get sanctioned by the senior officers and by the Ministry of Defence or the Royal Air Force, and that would then be the script that I would give. Of course, there were certain events where you'd have to change it because of whether it be the weather or the relevance in some places. That there might be some places where some of the messages you're giving necessarily weren't the message you're trying to give. So if you're overseas, for example, actually it might be that defence diplomacy was a bigger factor, so you'd add or remove things depending on where the location or what you're displaying. So yeah, it was It was pretty much scripted, but with a little bit of free play if required.
Yeah. And did you enjoy interacting with the crowds?
I was very fortunate because being in the Red Arrows, of course, the Hawks take quite a lot of runway, so unless you were at an airfield where the jets could land, invariably you wouldn't get to meet the pilots as a member of the crowd. Whereas as Red 10, I had to be on the ground at every public display, so I would normally land a jet at the airfield with the rest of the team, which would become the spare aeroplane. I'd then get in a helicopter and go to the display site. The beauty of that was I had to be on the ground an hour and a half before display start, so once I'd given Red 1 the brief on all the safety aspects, I then pretty much had 45 minutes of going around meeting people, and it was fantastic. You know, a lot of familiar faces. There were quite a few guys and girls who went to a lot of shows, and you'd see them at every single show, which is great. And it was nice to have friendly faces around, but also just meeting kids who some's never seen the Red Arrows before and just were anticipating what they're about to see, or had seen it the day before and wanted to tell me how much they loved it, so I could pass it on to the rest of the pilots. So it became a really, really, really brilliant part of the job, was meeting tens of thousands of people every week. And it genuinely was tens of thousands of people every week, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Of course, you couldn't get away with much because you're in a red suit, walking around an air show. There's only one, apart from kids in their little red suits, there was only one adult in a red suit normally at an air show. So you stood out, and people would just chase you down and ask to talk to you, and it was fantastic. But the cheeks started hurting after a while after so many selfies, because there were an awful lot of selfies taken. It was brilliant. And I think what it showed was that the support for the team in this country still is phenomenal. There are so many people that love what the team do and what they stand for, and that really came through when I was meeting all the people in the summer. Yeah.
And obviously there was a point where you thought this was going to be the end of your Red Arrows career, but this wasn't the case, was it?
Well, I did 2012 was my first year as Red 10. My 2 years turned into 3, and then turned into 5, and then actually ended up doing 6 years as Red 10, and that's either I needed more practice, or actually it worked for everyone. In that there were quite a few changes in the team around the middle of my period, where they wanted a bit of continuity, so they asked if I'd stay another couple of years, which I delightfully agreed to. So end of 2017. 2017 was my last year as Red 10, and that was meant to be hang up the red suit and off I went. I went to the Central Flying School to what was meant primarily a desk job as the air safety manager, but I was staying flying the Hawk as an instrument examiner and as an instructor. So I left with some qualifications that enabled me to then go back and essentially do the annual tests on the Red Arrows and other Hawk pilots. So I went to the Central Flying School at Cranwell, but I started that in January 18. And then very sadly in March of 18 there was a fatal accident at RAF Valley where Corporal John Bayliss was in the back seat of Red 3's jets, Flight Lieutenant Dave Stark, and they had an accident, very last minute ejection for David, and he was injured, but unfortunately John Bayliss was in the back and was killed. So again, a really tough time for the team, and as the air safety manager for the team, it was very difficult to have to go and visit them and see the squadron going through so much pain at a very difficult time. But that was end of March, so a decision had to be made, because it was of course a very important year in 2018 for the Royal Air Force's 100th anniversary. So they needed a 9-ship with the Red Arrows, and because I was still flying the Hawk, because I'd only just left the team, I didn't have to go through any retraining to get flying the Hawk again. I was a suitable choice for going back to replace David, who had hurt his leg. So I went back to the team to be Red 3 again. So having been Red 3 in 2008, 10 years later I was Red 3 again.
And where did you fly on your last tour on the Red Arrows? Did you go, was it just the UK?
We did, because we did the Mediterranean exercise in Greece, so that was I think 4 or 5 weeks, where that was really the training I did, because I joined quite late on in the training. Most of the training took place in Greece, so we spent I think it was 4 or 5 weeks out there doing the training, and then we came back and did mostly in the summer. It was in the UK, because of course RAF 100, we got to spend time in the UK for RAF 100. But at the end of the season, we did actually go overseas, and we displayed in Jersey, Menorca, and Monaco. So it was a nice finish to the season.
Very nice.
At the Monaco Yacht Show, which was a really special moment. Yeah.
So Mike, it sounds like you had a brilliant career with the Red Arrows, but is there any memorable stories or flyovers you've done?
Well, there's been quite a few. You know, it's in 10 seasons with the team, there were a number of things that stand out were I could be here forever. But certainly start off with 2008. I'll do it sequentially. 2008, we're flying over RAF 90th anniversary over London in April. So the 1st of April 2008. That was a great moment. And then flying to the States and flying over the Statue of Liberty and displaying in New York Harbour. You don't get that opportunity every day. 2009, being part of Synchro was phenomenal. Just having all the display sites where you've got an extra level of concentration and thought going into it. 2010 was a difficult year, so I won't talk about that one. 2012, when I joined as Red 10, it was a big year for the team. Now, unfortunately, the decision was taken to fly as a 7 aircraft formation for the display rather than 9. But of course, a big year with Her Majesty's Diamond Jubilee and the London Olympics. We had to have 9 aircraft for every fly pass. So I actually flew as Red 9 in 2012. So what that gave me the personal opportunity to do was to fly over London, I think 7 times that year.
7.
So for the Diamond Jubilee events and for the Olympic events. The biggest one, of course, being the opening ceremony at the London Olympics, which I was told there were 1.4 billion people watching. So no pressure in that regard. But also, I had the Chief of the Air Staff in my back seat.
Oh, did you?
So even more pressure.
Yeah.
And but it's just one of those events where I'll never forget that. It was a beautiful sunset, flying towards the Olympic Stadium, and some of the photos that appeared in the paper. It was at front page of the Times the following day.
It was, yeah.
And what a memorable experience. And of course, as I said, flying over Her Majesty on countless occasions that year was really special. 2013, actually 2013, a great day at work was I got the opportunity to race Lewis Hamilton in his Formula 1 car. So I'm a huge Formula 1 fan, and he came to Scampton, Mercedes came to Scampton with one of the cars, and I had David Coulthard in my back seat, and we did some flying up and down the runway with Lewis driving up and down the runway, and that was, just pinch yourself moment. Really.
I know.
Really incredible. 2014, lots of things. It was the Red Arrows 50th, so we did loads of really good things for the Red Arrows 50th. For me, actually, the biggest thing about 2014, if you remember, it was the 2 Lancs summer where the Canadian Lancaster came over. And having the Canadian Lancaster and then the display circuit with 2 Lancasters in formation was brilliant anyway. But for me, my grandfather was a Lancaster pilot, so he was one of my inspirations back in the day, and used to talk to him about what he got up to with his flying. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but what I got to do when the Canadian Lancaster arrived in the UK is I went and escorted it into Lincolnshire. So I got airborne. There was a big plan for all the Battle of Britain Memorial flight and the Red Arrows to meet up with it, and loads of photo shoots, but the weather was horrendous. So I got sent up as the sacrificial lamb to go and meet it, and got to fly in formation with the Lancaster.
Bet you weren't complaining
though. No, not at all, not at all. It was quite difficult in bad weather finding a camouflaged aeroplane over low level over Lincolnshire, but got to join up with it, and it was an amazing experience. 2015. Well, the good thing about 2015 is that Monty, who had been my synchro wingman in 2010, then came back as Red 1. So he and I working together again was brilliant, and we had a great time to developing the display and going around the country in 2015. 2016 was monumentous in that we went to China and back. So taking 40-year-old aeroplanes all the way to China.
That was incredible.
It was brilliant, and you had to stop 22 times to get fuel, and in every place we were displaying or doing some form of ground engagement. So busy times, 9 weeks of very busy activity, but still memories of seeing the jungles of Myanmar or landing in Bangladesh and meeting the Bangladeshi ground crew who came to the jet. There are so many little things that just stick in here that I've had the opportunity to do, and I'm very fortunate that that's been the case.
Do they randomly pop up? You're like, oh, I remember that now.
Yeah, they are. And coming here to the Blades and chatting through with guys and girls that I work with, and just reminding each other of things that we did, and I'd forgotten about that. Or every now and then just flicking through my logbook and just going, yeah, I remember that so well. Cool. And that's really, really special actually, is just flicking through and reminding myself, that there have been so many pinch yourself moments that I sometimes do forget them, and that makes me feel awful. So always important to look back through them. So that was 2016. 2017, the key memory I've got is Petra. So we got a photograph of the team down the Petra Valley, which that's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You wouldn't normally be allowed to fly low level around there, but the Jordanians gave us permission, and we got the shot. So I was flying the camera chase with an RAF photographer in the back seat, and 9 aeroplanes down that valley is tight enough, but with a camera chase as well, get the shot and then pull up before flying into a mountain was and the results though are, for me, one of the best photos I can remember of the Red Arrows.
Yeah, it's a good photo.
So that was up to my finish time of Red 10, and then last year, so my final year, my actual final year as Red 3 was without doubt the RAF 100 fly pass, where we were the back end of a train of 102 Royal Air Force aeroplanes, which was amazing. It just flying over London again, which it never got dull. It was always important and special going over London. It really gave you a buzz. But the best thing about that fly past was that as we coasted in East Anglia, even at the coast, there were scores and scores of cars parked up, thousands of people, and every bridge and every flyover on that route, there were thousands of people.
Really?
And when you got to London itself, hundreds of thousands of people, and it was just amazing. But of course, we were at the back end of the train, so we could see all the other airplanes in front of us approaching the London skyline, and just in front of us were 22 Typhoons in a 100 shape. But of course, to us it was 001 because we were behind them. But we were just to see all of that in front, and that's something I'm never going to forget at all.
Brilliant.
So incredible opportunities and times, and I could spend hours and hours talking about it. But
very lucky man indeed.
It was great.
So Mike, obviously we're here with another display team called the Blades. How did you become a part of the team?
So the Blades are a team that are made up of majority ex-Red Arrows pilots. There's one pilot in this year's team that is a guest pilot who's not been in a Red Arrow before, but historically for the last 13 years the team have always been ex-Red Arrows pilots, and it was set up by Andy Offer, who was Red 1 back in the early 2000s, and he kept getting asked when he was Red 1, can I come flying with you? And the answer in a military airplane is no, sorry, we can't take you flying. So he set up the Blades as part of 2XL Aviation. He set up the Blades as a team of 4 extra 300 airplanes, as you see here, and the idea is that we can put passengers in the front seat and take them on formation aerobatic sorties and show them roughly what it's like to fly in the Red Arrows. So flying next to another airplane upside down at maybe 2 meters apart, something like that. So what's interesting is that actually we're an airline, so we're the world's only aerobatic airline. So we have all the same safety and security measures that any other airline would have, albeit we fly them in little aeroplanes and we fly them upside down. So that's how the team was formed. I was shortly due to leave the Royal Air Force. I had another 18 months to serve, and I'd bumped into these guys and girls at an air show, and they said, do you fancy coming down to chat to us about what you might do next? And I said, I'll come and have a look. I'd flown with the team on a number of occasions in the past, so knew that it was something that would definitely interest me. It just happened that I was trying to make this decision as to what to do next and where to go, and I saw them in Bournemouth at the air show, and I went down to visit them. And what I'd actually agreed to do is that in my final year in the Royal Air Force, I'd got permission from the senior command to actually fly as a guest pilot with the team for the summer. So I'd started training at the back end of 2017 to be a guest pilot for 2018. Of course, that got put on ice when I had to go back to the Red Arrows as Red 3. So I then left the Red Arrows in October 18 and had to go and get my commercial pilot's license, which took a couple of months, and then I joined these guys in March. So I started full-time in March and was put in the Blade 3 position. Having been Red 3 last year, Blade 3, it made sense to keep me on the left-hand side and mostly be similar sort of procedures to the Red 3. So, of course, having ex-Red Arrows start the team and be part of the team, or make up the team for the last 13 years, the procedures are very, very similar. So setting everything up is almost identical to the way the Red Arrows do business, albeit the aeroplane's a little bit, well, it's a lot lighter, it's a little bit slower, but quite a bit more nimble.
Yeah. So could you talk us through the aircraft? What type is it, and how different was it coming from a fast jet?
So this is an extra 300. It was designed purely for competition aerobatics, really. So it's very simple. It's basically a tubular frame with some panels covering it. So very, very light. It's about 750 kilograms. It's got a 300 horsepower Lycoming engine, which is pretty sporty actually, considering how light the aeroplane is, and it's designed just for aerobatics. So it's got huge ailerons, it's got a big elevator, it's very light indeed. Everyone's flown piston aeroplanes learning to fly, so elementary flying training and private pilot's licenses all have piston engines. So I'd flown piston engine a little bit anyway. What I hadn't done too much of is tail drag at time. Now on modern aeroplanes you'll see that you have 2 main wheels under the wings and then normally a nose wheel just under the engine. Whereas with this aircraft, because of where the centre of gravity sits, actually it's got a tail wheel. So no nose wheel, it's got a tail wheel. All that means is that for handling on the ground and for takeoff and landing, it makes it very different because A, you can't see anything out the cockpit. Because of the incline the aeroplane sits naturally, you get different aerodynamic effects from the propeller. Takeoff and landing, you get torque effect from a very powerful engine. And there are certain things you need to think about for takeoff and landing. As soon as you get the tail up, actually it becomes a normal aeroplane because the aerodynamics work the same as another propeller aeroplane. But learning the intricacies of tail dragging was by far the biggest hurdle of coming to fly this. And then when it comes to aerobatics, there are things you can do, so what we call gyroscopic manoeuvres, which you can't do in a jet. If you tried some of the manoeuvres you can do in a jet, it would go very badly indeed. So there are some manoeuvres that sometimes you look out the window and say, oh, well, I don't even know which way is up now because you've just put so many inputs in. But that's one of the challenges of this job, and what I'm really loving is learning all the new manoeuvres.
So what's in store for the blades for the 2019 season?
So we just did our first display, first public display, which was at Duxford at the weekend, and just before that we'd done a private display here at Sywell, which was actually the Blades 1000th display. So this year is the 14th display season, and a week before last, so mid-May, we did the 1000th Blades display. So quite a keystone, and it's a key moment. And on the tail we've got a big 1000 now, so that's going to be seen by everyone at the shows this summer.
Congrats to the team, yeah.
Yes, it's great. So a really big moment for the team, and certainly for Andy Evans, who's Blade 1, who has been in the team since its inception. He did have one year where he was sort of sharing the 2 and 3 positions, so or sharing the Blade 2 position, I should say. So he's not actually done 1000 himself. I think he's got another 20 to go. But in 18 shows time now, let's say, he'll have done 1000 displays himself just in the Blade. So having done 4 years in the Reds as well, he's got quite a lot of display flying under his belt. Yeah. Incidentally, he's one of the most experienced extra pilots in the world. He's got 3,000 hours on one of these aeroplanes. So pretty incredible.
It is, yeah.
So yeah, that's what we've got in store. So a few more shows this week, and then really with the Red Arrows going overseas this year, we've had a few extra displays booked that potentially the team might not normally be invited to, just to cover a gap in the programmes. But hopefully what that means is that if they like what they see, it'll be a repeat booking for next year. So hopefully it will be a very busy summer, and then all the summers to come.
Yeah. So what's your favourite manoeuvre of this season?
We do some fairly wacky manoeuvres. The display is 15 minutes long, so just a bit shorter than a Red Arrows display. But in those 15 minutes, there are 30 separate manoeuvres. So there's always something happening for the crowd. There's always something that the crowd get to see. I lead the first part of the synchro pair element. We split into 2 synchro pairs almost, and I lead Kirsty in some of those manoeuvres. So I like doing what we call the pairs Lomshavac. So Lomshavac is one of these gyroscopic manoeuvres I'm talking about, where you get to the vertical and then just put the controls into almost the top left corner with your left foot forward, and it does a bit of a catapult, if you like, and goes almost like a flick manoeuvre going upwards. So that's quite a fun manoeuvre to fly. Called a Lomshavac, which means hangover in Czech, I'm told. So you can see why if you see it, if you fly it. So I like that. We do 4 synchronised aileron rolls. So we come in box or diamond formation, where all 4 of us do a synchronised aileron roll 4 times along the display line. Oh. And to get that absolutely perfect is really challenging.
I can imagine.
It's brilliant, because then you know when you've done it right. You just get the feel that it's happened, and at the corner of your eye you see the other aeroplanes, and you just know that it's all worked together. You also know if you haven't done it right, because you finish at the wrong time. And then we do something called the Hammerhead, where all 4 of us fly in line abreast. We pitch up and do synchronised stall turns, which you wouldn't want to try a stall turn in a jet. So having this aeroplane, which loves stall turns, getting that absolutely perfect is again quite difficult. But you know when you've done it, and it's a real pat on the back when it's gone right, and it looks good. So they're probably my favourite manoeuvres: Lomshavacs, the Aileron rolls, and the Hammerhead.
Brilliant. So where can we find the blades online?
If you go to theblades.com, there's actually a new website, only got released or started or launched at the start of this month. So that's a really good place for getting information about the team, because it's not just displays that the team do. We actually are, as I say, we're an airline. So actually the best thing about the team, and the best thing I'm loving about my new job, is that I can fly people in the front seat. And they come along as a passenger. They'll have a full day here where they get looked after very, very well. They'll fly in the airplane with us. We'll do formation aerobatics, and then individual aerobatics, where I show them some of those Lomshavacs and other crazy things. Fly helicopters. You hear the helicopters behind me here at Sywell. We have a helicopter hovering competition with our guests, a nice gourmet chef for lunch, but you get a full day here. There's another interesting thing called Blades Flight Club. So once you've done one of those days, you're automatically qualified to become a member of the Blades Flight Club, which, if you've enjoyed your flight and want to come back for more, you can come back and do some extra, call them modules of flying, where you can come and, again, sit in the front. We have 4 modules. One of them is advanced aerobatics, where we can show you things that you haven't seen on the first one and actually will take you to the next level up, providing you like the first one. Advanced formation, where I've just mentioned the Hammerhead, we'll show you that in formation. We'll show you inverted flying in formation, and some other of the more display manoeuvres, if you like. And then we have a take control. So when we do a passenger fly, we don't give control to the passengers. They are there just as a passenger. But this new flight club module, which is called Take Control, there are all 4 of us in the main team this year are qualified instructors, so flying instructors. So we can actually teach you how to fly the aeroplane and some of those manoeuvres. Okay. So that's a take control module, where we did one last week where I was teaching a 75-year-old lady how to fly a loop and an aileron roll. So it was brilliant, and she was having a great time. And then the last module is air combat, where a lot of people have never flown with a military pilot that can show them roughly what it's like to be a military pilot and what military pilots do. So we have an air combat module where we go up as a pair and we just do basic dogfighting and basic fighter manoeuvres and show them the principles of dogfighting and what it would need to be to get in somebody's 6 o'clock, what it was like in the Battle of Britain, let's say.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, and we can do that. That's now the flight club. So yes, I love flying the aerobatics at public shows doing this, but actually the best part is putting someone in the front and showing somebody who's never done anything like that before what it's really all about. And that's definitely something I'm thoroughly enjoying at the moment. So that's go on theblades.com and you can read all about that and how you can come and book a day here at Sywell. There's also social media. So on Twitter it's @TheBladesTeam. On Instagram and Facebook it's @TheBladesOfficial. So you can find us there and follow us over the summer.
Right, there's just a few personal questions, Mike, for you to answer. So, do you have any hobbies apart from flying?
Hobbies apart from flying? Well, I do. I fly an awful lot, and in fact, my missus couldn't believe that even when I was in the Red Arrows, I was paying to go flying little aeroplanes at weekends. So she couldn't quite grasp that. So yeah, I think flying is definitely the number one hobby. Yeah. I absolutely love Formula One, so I'm an avid follower of that. I've been to quite a few races, and I will make sure I sit and watch it. I also like watching England rugby, because who doesn't? So yeah, I don't like a bit of rugby. And then other than that, I've got two very young children, so
busy man.
Yeah, hobbies aren't really the flavour at the moment. I don't really have time for them, with certainly in the summer.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have a favourite aircraft you've flown?
A favourite aircraft I've flown? So I'm very lucky. I got a few trips in a Harrier. That was good fun, something different, hovering that. I've done a lot of flying in helicopters, and normally I wouldn't say that I like helicopters, but I have to say the Squirrel was a lot of fun. I got a fair number of hours when in my Red 10 role flying backwards and forwards in Squirrels, and I actually got quite fond of it in terms of how it handled and what it could do with it. But I've been very, very lucky to have had a couple of back seats in Spitfires. So I did in 2015, so what was deemed the hardest day during the Battle of Britain, so in August of 1940, the 75th anniversary of that day, I was very fortunate. I flew from Biggin Hill, so my hometown, which was absolutely key during the Battle of Britain. I was put in the back of a Spitfire and flown from Biggin Hill to Headcorn Aerodrome in Kent. So just what I did before that is I did a lot of research as to what was based there, which squadrons were based there, and who flew on those squadrons, and for the exact time I took off on that day, what they were going to do, and who came back and who didn't. So actually taking off on the northerly runway at Biggin Hill 03, seeing the London skyline, knowing that there were 19-year-old boys who were getting airborne in Spitfires to defend that, and knowing that actually a fair few of them on that day didn't come back. It just made it such an emotional flight.
Yeah, it must have hit home, yeah.
Yeah, and that was my first Spitfire trip. So not only have you overwhelmed with sort of the senses of smell and sound and sight and of all these things in this amazing aeroplane, but just the fact that what had happened 75 years ago at that moment was incredible.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I was very, very fortunate. So I'd have to say that my favourite flight was that flight.
It has to be, doesn't it? Yeah.
Just from a pure, I got to fly the aeroplane and do aerobatics in it as well, but that actually was secondary to what that actually meant as to what had happened 75 years previous. So that was probably the best thing I've done is flying Spitfire. Yeah.
Is there one you wish you could have flown?
I did. I used to love the Jaguar as well, and I never got to fly the Jaguar. I'm not going to tell my leader Andy Evans that, because he gets a lot of banter for being a Jaguar pilot. But I did like the Jaguar, and I never got to have a go in it, which is a shame. But certainly from the Royal Air Force's arsenal, if you like, I didn't get to fly in a Jaguar. I got to a Typhoon trip just before I left the Royal Air Force with a friend of mine who was the boss of the OCU at the time. So I got to fly with him, and that was incredible. It was just a totally different machine to anything I'd flown before. But yeah, I would like to have had a go in a Jaguar. And then if you're looking wider afield, then Blackbird, the SR-71.
Oh wow, I wasn't expecting that, but yes.
Yeah, well, and that's just an incredible aeroplane, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's that story online of speed checks.
Was it the Hornet guy?
Yeah, the Hornet guy, and then the Cessna, and then this guy. Yeah,
that's brilliant.
So, what a machine that is!
Yeah.
And actually at Duxford at the weekend, I just popped in to have a bit of geek moment and have a look at the.
It's magnificent up close, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, lovely sound.
There you go.
So Mike, can we find you personally online on Twitter or Instagram?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mike Ling Pilot, which is makes it nice and easy. I try and put as much as I can on there. When I was Red 10, it was quite easy to. There's the odd half hour in a day where I could be online and post as much as I could, but it's quite busy doing this now day to day. So I try and put as much as I can on. But yeah, at Mike Ling Pilot on Twitter and the same on Instagram.
Brilliant. Well, Mike, thanks very much for sharing a bit of your story and giving us your time.
Thank you.